Welcome to Whispered Truth, where touching stories come alive. Let's jump into today's story.
Emily Pearson stood at the front of her classroom, her hazel eyes scanning the rows of sixth graders before her. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead, casting a harsh glow on the faded motivational posters that adorned the walls. Outside, the October wind whipped through the nearly bare trees, a reminder of the harsh Michigan winter that loomed just around the corner. "All right, everyone," Emily said, her voice warm but firm. "Let's take out our math worksheets from yesterday. We're going to go over the answers together." As the rustling of papers filled the room, Emily's gaze fell on Tommy Hernandez in the back row. The boy's shoulders were hunched, his eyes fixed on the scuffed linoleum floor. Emily frowned, noting the way Tommy's toes peeked out from the ends of his tattered sneakers. It wasn't the first time she'd noticed his worn-out footwear, but today, something about the sight tugged at her heart more insistently than usual. The rest of the class period passed in a blur of fractions and decimals, but Emily's mind kept drifting back to Tommy's shoes. When the bell finally rang, signaling the end of the school day, she made a decision. "Tammy," she called out as the students filed towards the door. "Could you stay back for a moment, please?" The boy approached her desk hesitantly, his eyes darting nervously around the room. Up close, Emily could see the dark circles under his eyes, the way his clothes hung loosely on his thin frame. "Am I in trouble, Miss Pearson?" Tommy asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Emily's heart clenched. "No, not at all," she assured him quickly. "I just wanted to ask, Tommy, is everything okay at home?" The boy's eyes widened, and he nodded vigorously. "Yes, ma'am, everything's fine." Emily hesitated, unsure how to broach the subject of his shoes without embarrassing him. "I notice your sneakers are looking a bit worn," she said gently. "Would you like some help getting a new pair?" Tommy's cheeks flushed, and he stared down at his feet. "My mom says we'll get new ones soon," he mumbled. "When she gets her next paycheck." Emily nodded, her mind racing. She knew she was treading on dangerous ground, but she couldn't bear the thought of Tommy trudging through the Michigan winter in shoes that were falling apart. "Tell you what," she said, forcing a cheerful note into her voice. "I have a gift card for the shoe store downtown that I'm not going to use. Why don't you take it? You can pick out any pair you like." Tommy's head snapped up, his eyes wide with disbelief. "Really? Are you sure?" Emily smiled, reaching into her desk drawer for her wallet. "Absolutely," she said, pulling out a gift card she'd been saving for herself. "Here you go. Promise me you'll get something warm and sturdy, okay?" Tommy took the card with trembling hands, a smile breaking across his face like sunshine after a storm. "Thank you, Miss Pearson," he said, his voice thick with emotion. I don't know what to say." "You don't have to say anything," Emily replied, her own eyes growing misty. "Just stay warm and keep working hard, okay?" As Tommy left the classroom, clutching the gift card like a lifeline, Emily felt a warmth spread through her chest. She knew she'd done the right thing, even if it meant postponing her own plans for a new pair of boots. What Emily didn't know, as she packed up her things and headed for the parking lot, was that her simple act of kindness was about to set in motion a chain of events that would change her life forever. She couldn't have imagined that by the end of the week, her career would be in jeopardy, her beliefs would be challenged, and she would find herself thrust into the center of a controversy that would force her to question everything she thought she knew about justice, compassion, and the true cost of doing what's right. As she climbed into her beat-up Corolla, the autumn wind whipping her auburn hair across her face, Emily had no idea that the storm clouds gathering on the horizon were more than just a sign of changing weather. They were harbingers of a personal tempest that would test her resolve, break her heart, and ultimately lead her to discover strengths she never knew she possessed. The engine sputtered to life, and Emily pulled out of the school parking lot, humming softly to herself. For now, she was content in the knowledge that she'd made a difference in a child's life. Little did she know, the true test of her convictions was yet to come. Emily's contentment lasted precisely 3 days, 2 hours, and 17 minutes. On Friday afternoon, as the final bell rang and students flooded the hallways with weekend excitement, Principal Harriet Thornton's voice crackled over the intercom. "Miss Pearson, please report to my office immediately." The pit in Emily's stomach grew with each step towards the administration wing. She'd always had a cordial, if not warm, relationship with Principal Thornton. But the terseness in the older woman's voice left little doubt that this wasn't a social call. As Emily entered the office, she was met with not only Principal Thornton's stern gaze, but also the concerned face of Vice Principal Derek Simmons. The atmosphere was thick with tension. "Have a seat, Miss Pearson," Principal Thornton said, gesturing to the chair across from her desk. Emily sat, her hands clasped tightly in her lap to hide their trembling. "Do you know why you're here?" Thornton asked, her steel gray eyes boring into Emily. Emily swallowed hard. I'm not sure," she replied, though a sinking feeling in her gut told her exactly what this was about. Thornton's lips pressed into a thin line. "We've received a complaint from a parent. Apparently, you gave a student money to buy new shoes." Emily's heart raced. "It wasn't money," she clarified quickly. "It was a gift card The distinction is irrelevant," Thornton cut her off. "What matters is that you violated school policy by providing financial assistance to a student without proper authorization." Emily felt as if the air had been sucked out of the room. "I was just trying to help," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Tommy's shoes were falling apart, winter's coming, and Your intentions, while admirable, are not the issue here," Vice Principal Simmons interjected, his tone softer but no less firm. "We have protocols in place for a reason. Emily, there are proper channels for addressing student needs." Emily's mind whirled. "But those channels take time," she argued. "Tommy needed help now, I didn't think." "That's precisely the problem," Thornton snapped. "You didn't think, you put this school at risk. What if other parents start demanding similar treatment? What if the Hernandez family decides to sue, claiming favoritism or discrimination?" Tears pricked at Emily's eyes. "Sue, but I was only trying to help." Thornton's expression softened slightly, but her voice remained resolute. "I understand that, Emily, but good intentions don't shield us from legal ramifications. The school board has made their decision. I'm afraid we have to terminate your employment, effective immediately." The words hit Emily like a physical blow. "Terminate," she echoed, her voice hollow. "You're firing me over a pair of shoes?" "Over a breach of policy and professional conduct," Thornton corrected. "You'll be paid through the end of the month, and we won't contest your unemployment claim, but I'm going to have to ask you to clear out your classroom by the end of the day." Emily sat there, stunned, as Simmons awkwardly explained the logistics of her departure. His words washed over her in a meaningless blur. All she could think about was Tommy's face lighting up when she'd handed him that gift card. How could something that felt so right have gone so terribly wrong? As she stumbled out of the office, her vision blurred by unshed tears, Emily nearly collided with a small figure lurking by the door. It was Tommy, his new shoes squeaking slightly on the polished floor. "Miss Pearson," he asked, his voice trembling. "Is everything okay? I heard some of the other teachers talking. They said you might be in trouble because of me." Emily forced a smile, though it felt more like a grimace. "Everything's fine, Tommy," she lied, her heart breaking at the worry in his eyes. Don't you worry about a thing, okay? You just focus on your studies and staying warm in those new shoes. As Tommy nodded uncertainly and scampered off, Emily leaned against the wall, letting the tears finally fall. She'd lost her job, her purpose, her sense of security, all because she'd tried to do the right thing. As she slowly made her way to her classroom to begin packing up her life's work, Emily couldn't help but wonder, in a world where kindness came with such a steep price, how was anyone supposed to make a difference? Little did Emily know, as she folded her motivational posters and packed away her lesson plans, that her act of compassion had set wheels in motion far beyond the walls of Lakeside Middle School. Across town, in a sleek high-rise office, a man named Jonathan Reeves was about to take a very keen interest in the story of a teacher who sacrificed everything for a pair of shoes. The following week crawled by in a haze of self-doubt and Netflix binges. Emily's apartment, a cozy one-bedroom in a gentrifying part of town, felt more like a prison than a home. Stacks of graded papers and half-packed boxes from her classroom served as constant reminders of her fall from grace. It was on a particularly gloomy Tuesday afternoon when Emily's phone buzzed with an unfamiliar number. She almost let it go to voicemail. Another sympathy call from a well-meaning colleague was the last thing she needed, but something compelled her to answer. "Hello, is this Emily Pearson?" a smooth baritone voice inquired. "Yes, this is she," Emily replied, curiosity piqued. "Miss Pearson, my name is Jonathan Reeves. I'm the CEO of Reeves Enterprises, and I'd like to discuss a potential opportunity with you. Do you have a moment?" Emily's brow furrowed. Reeves Enterprises? The name rang a bell, some sort of tech company, if she remembered correctly. But why would they be calling her? Sure, she said, scrambling to sit up straighter on her couch, as if the caller could somehow see her disheveled state. "What kind of opportunity?" "I'll cut to the chase, Miss Pearson. Your recent situation at Lakeside Middle School has come to my attention. I was deeply moved by your act of kindness and equally disturbed by the consequences you faced. I believe someone with your compassion and initiative could be a valuable asset to our organization." Emily's heart raced. Was this some kind of joke? "I'm sorry, Mr. Reeves, but I'm a bit confused. What exactly does your company do, and how does my teaching experience factor in?" There was a warm chuckle on the other end of the line. "Forgive me, I should have explained. While Reeves Enterprises is primarily a tech company, we also run a non-profit foundation focused on education and child welfare. We're looking for someone to head up a new initiative, and I believe you might be the perfect fit." As Jonathan outlined the position, a role that would involve identifying schools and students in need, coordinating resources, and implementing programs to support underprivileged children, Emily felt a spark of hope ignite in her chest for the first time in days. "This sounds incredible, Mr. Reeves," she said, trying to keep the tremor out of her voice. "But why me? Surely there are more qualified candidates out there." "Qualifications can be learned, Miss Pearson. Compassion and courage, on the other hand, are far rarer commodities. You demonstrated both when you helped that boy. Consequences be damned. That's exactly the kind of person we need." Emily's mind whirled with possibilities, but a nagging doubt persisted. "This all sounds too good to be true," she admitted. "How did you even hear about what happened?" There was a pause on the other end of the line. "Let's just say I have my sources," Jonathan replied, a hint of amusement in his voice. "But if you're interested, I'd like to invite you to our offices for a proper interview. No strings attached. Just a chance to explore if this might be a good fit for both of us." As Emily jotted down the details for the interview, scheduled for the following morning, she felt a mix of excitement and trepidation. Was this the lifeline she'd been hoping for, or was she setting herself up for another disappointment? The next day, Emily stood in front of the imposing glass tower that housed Reeves Enterprises, her reflection staring back at her from the polished surface. She smoothed down her best blazer, a bit wrinkled from its time in storage, and took a deep breath. As she stepped into the sleek lobby, a friendly receptionist directed her to the executive floor. The elevator ride seemed to take an eternity, giving Emily's doubts time to resurface. What if this was all some elaborate prank? Or worse, what if it was real, but she wasn't up to the task? The elevator doors slid open, revealing a stunning view of the city skyline. A tall, distinguished-looking man with salt and pepper hair and kind eyes stepped forward, hand outstretched. "Miss Pearson," he said warmly, "and Jonathan Reeves, welcome to Reeves Enterprises." As Emily shook his hand, she couldn't shake the feeling that she was standing on the precipice of something life-changing. Little did she know just how right she was or how challenging the path ahead would prove to be. For as Emily was about to discover, the world of corporate philanthropy was a far cry from her middle school classroom, and the lessons she was about to learn would test not only her skills, but the very core of her beliefs about education, charity, and what it truly means to make a difference in the world. The first few weeks at Reeves Enterprises were a whirlwind of introductions, orientations, and information overload. Emily's head spun with new terminology, corporate structures, and the intricacies of nonprofit law. Her small, tidy classroom had been replaced by an open plan office with floor-to-ceiling windows and ergonomic chairs that cost more than her old monthly salary. Despite the initial overwhelm, Emily threw herself into her new role with characteristic determination. She pored over reports of underfunded schools, studied successful intervention programs, and began to sketch out ideas for the Foundation's new initiative. It was during one of these late-night brainstorming sessions, the city lights twinkling far below her new office, that Jonathan Reeves found her. "Burning the midnight oil, I see," he said, leaning against the doorframe. Emily startled, nearly knocking over her cup of now cold coffee. "Mr. Reeves, I didn't realize anyone else was still here." He waved away her formality. "Please, call me Jonathan, and I'm often here late. The work never really stops, does it?" Emily nodded, gesturing to the papers strewn across her desk. "I'm just trying to get my head around all of this. There's so much need out there. So many kids like Tommy. I want to make sure we're doing this right." Jonathan's eyes softened. "That's why you're perfect for this job, Emily. You see the individuals behind the statistics." He paused, then added, "But don't lose sight of the bigger picture. We're not just here to buy shoes or books. We're here to change the system." Emily frowned. "What do you mean?" Jonathan settled into the chair across from her desk. "Think about it. Why was Tommy in that situation to begin with? Why are so many schools underfunded? It's not just about band-aid solutions. We need to address the root causes." As Jonathan spoke about systemic inequalities, lobbying for policy changes, and leveraging corporate influence for social good, Emily felt a mixture of excitement and unease. This was so far beyond anything she'd ever imagined when she was teaching fractions and grammar. "It's a lot to take in," Jonathan said, noting her expression. "But I have faith in you, Emily. You have the heart for this work, and will help you develop the skills you need." As he left, Emily turned back to her notes with renewed vigor. She was determined to prove herself worthy of this opportunity, to make a real difference on a scale she'd never dreamed possible. But as the weeks turned into months, Emily found herself grappling with unexpected challenges. The corporate world, even in its philanthropic arm, operated on a different wavelength than her classroom had. Metrics, ROI, and scalable solutions became part of her daily vocabulary. She found herself in meetings with politicians, tech moguls, and education reformers, each with their own agenda, and vision for how to fix the education system. It was during one such meeting, 6 months into her new role, that Emily faced her first real test. The foundation was considering a partnership with a large tech company to provide tablets to underfunded schools. The potential for positive impact was huge, but something about the deal didn't sit right with Emily. "I just think we need to consider the long-term implications," she argued, acutely aware of the room full of executives watching her. "Yes, tablets can be great learning tools, but what about training for the teachers, ongoing tech support? And are we inadvertently creating a dependence on this company's products?" The tech company's CEO, a slick man in an expensive suit, smiled condescendingly. "Miss Pearson, with all due respect, this is how progress happens. We can't let perfect be the enemy of good." Emily felt her cheeks flush, but she stood her ground. "I'm not arguing against progress. I'm arguing for thoughtful, sustainable progress. These aren't just numbers on a spreadsheet. These are real kids, real teachers, real communities we're affecting." The room fell silent. Emily's heart pounded in her chest as she waited for the fallout. To her surprise, it was Jonathan who broke the tension with a laugh. "This gentleman," he said, gesturing to Emily, "is exactly why we hired her. She keeps us honest." Turning to Emily, he added, "Your concerns are valid. Let's table this discussion and reconvene once we've addressed these issues." As the meeting adjourned, Emily felt a mix of relief and lingering anxiety. She'd spoken her mind, stayed true to her principles, but at what cost? Had she just torpedoed a major deal? Jeopardized her position? Later that evening, as she sat in her new apartment, a significant upgrade from her old place, thanks to her new salary, Emily found herself questioning everything. Was she cut out for this world of high-stakes decisions and corporate maneuvering? Was she really making a difference? Or had she just traded one flawed system for another? As she stared out at the city skyline, so different from the view of the school playground she used to have, Emily couldn't shake the feeling that she was standing at a crossroads. The path ahead was unclear, fraught with ethical dilemmas and hard choices. But one thing was certain: there was no going back to the simplicity of her old life. Little did Emily know, the true test of her convictions and the real reason Jonathan Reeves had sought her out was yet to come. As she prepared for bed, her mind still churning with doubts and questions, Emily had no idea that the next day would bring a revelation that would shake her world to its core and force her to confront the true cost of making a difference in a world where nothing is as simple as it seems. The next morning, Emily arrived at the office earlier than usual, her mind still racing from the previous day's confrontation. As she stepped off the elevator, she was surprised to see Jonathan's assistant, Lydia, waiting for her. "Mr. Reeves would like to see you in his office right away," Lydia said, her usually cheerful face uncharacteristically somber. Emily's stomach dropped. This was it, she thought. She'd overstepped, and now she was about to face the consequences. Jonathan's office occupied the entire top floor of the building, offering a panoramic view of the city. As Emily entered, she found him standing by the floor-to-ceiling windows, his back to her. "Emily," he said, turning to face her. "Please, have a seat." She sat, perched on the edge of a sleek leather chair, bracing herself for the worst. "I owe you an explanation," Jonathan began, his voice heavy, "and perhaps an apology." Emily blinked, caught off guard. This wasn't at all what she'd expected. Jonathan sighed, running a hand through his silver hair. "You've probably been wondering why I sought you out, why I was so insistent on bringing you into this world." Emily nodded, not trusting herself to speak. "The truth is, Emily, I've been watching you for a long time, long before the incident with Tommy and his shoes. A chill ran down Emily's spine. I don't understand, she managed to say. Jonathan's eyes met hers, filled with a mixture of guilt and determination. 25 years ago, I was Tommy, a poor kid with worn-out shoes, struggling in a system that seemed designed to hold me back. Emily's mind reeled. But how? My teacher, Miss Sarah Thompson, did for me what you did for Tommy. She bought me new shoes, gave me extra tutoring, believed in me when no one else did. Jonathan's voice cracked slightly. She changed my life, and then she lost her job for it. The pieces started to fall into place in Emily's mind. So when you heard about what happened to me, Jonathan nodded. It was like history repeating itself. I knew I had to do something, not just for you, but for all the Miss Thompsons and Tommys out there. Emily sat back, trying to process this revelation. But why didn't you tell me this from the beginning? I wanted you to find your own way to see if you could navigate this world without losing the compassion that brought you here. Jonathan leaned forward, his eyes intense. And you've exceeded my every expectation, Emily. You've challenged us, pushed us to be better, to think beyond quick fixes and PR stunts. Emily felt a surge of emotion, pride, confusion, and a lingering sense of betrayal all mixed together. So what happens now? She asked. Jonathan stood, pacing the length of his office. Now, we take everything to the next level. I'm prepared to commit a significant portion of my personal wealth to create a new kind of educational foundation, one that addresses the root causes of inequality, that supports teachers and students in meaningful, lasting ways. He turned to face her, his expression earnest. And I want you to lead it, Emily, not as an employee, but as a partner, equal say, equal stake in the outcomes. Emily's head spun. This was beyond anything she could have imagined. The potential to make real, systemic change was exhilarating. But the weight of the responsibility was equally daunting. I don't know what to say, she stammered. Jonathan smiled. You don't have to decide right now. Take some time to think about it. But know this, whatever you decide. You've already made a profound difference, you reminded me. And this entire organization, of why we do what we do. As Emily left Jonathan's office, her mind was a whirlwind of thoughts and emotions. She made her way to the elevator in a daze, barely noticing the bustling activity around her. In the elevator, her reflection stared back at her from the polished doors. She hardly recognized the woman she saw, confident, poised, dressed in clothes that would have been unthinkable on a teacher's salary. But beneath the surface, she was still Emily Pearson, the woman who'd risked everything to help a child in need. As the elevator descended, Emily thought about Tommy, about Jonathan's revelation, about all the children out there who needed someone to believe in them. She thought about the power she now held to shape policies, to influence decision-makers, to truly make a difference on a scale she'd never imagined possible. But she also thought about the compromises she'd had to make, the corporate language she'd had to adopt, the wheeling and dealing that seemed so far removed from the simple act of helping a child. The elevator doors opened, and Emily stepped out into the lobby. As she walked toward the building's exit, she passed a large mirror. She paused, really looking at herself for the first time in months. Who are you now, Emily Pearson? She whispered to her reflection. And who do you want to be? As she pushed through the revolving doors and stepped out into the bustling city street, Emily realized that this wasn't an ending, but a beginning. The real challenge lay ahead, not just in deciding whether to accept Jonathan's offer, but in figuring out how to stay true to herself, to her values, in a world of immense power and equally immense responsibility. The autumn wind whipped around her, carrying with it the scent of possibility and the weight of choice. Emily took a deep breath, squared her shoulders, and took her first step into an uncertain but hopeful future. Whatever lay ahead, she knew one thing for certain. She would never stop fighting for the Tommies of the world, no matter the cost. Because in the end, it wasn't about shoes or jobs or foundations. It was about believing in the power of kindness to change lives, one small act at a time. As Emily walked down the busy street, blending into the crowd of morning commuters, she carried with her the seeds of change not just for herself, but for countless others whose lives she was now poised to touch. The story of the teacher who sacrificed everything for a pair of shoes was far from over. In fact, it was just beginning.
Hey, want to listen to another best story? Then click the floating video and subscribe for more.